Bartolo Longo's life began like that of many priests, filled with faith, devotion, and a desire to serve God. Yet beneath the surface, doubt gnawed at his heart. He had witnessed suffering, betrayal, and the quiet corruption of men who wielded the church's authority for personal gain. Questions that could not be answered by sermons or scripture haunted him. In the shadows of his own mind, he began to wonder, if God was truly just, why did evil prosper so freely? It was during this restless period that he was approached by those who whispered of power beyond the church, knowledge forbidden, and promises that could reshape the course of his life. They spoke of rituals and pacts, of ways to command the unseen forces of the world. At first, Bartolo resisted. He was a priest, sworn to the light. But temptation, especially when it preys on fear and ambition, is relentless. One night, driven by despair and curiosity, he performed a ritual that bound him to darkness. He became a priest of shadows, serving forces he once only feared. At first, the rewards were intoxicating. Secrets revealed themselves, wealth and influence flowed effortlessly, and men bent to his will. Yet the gifts came with a terrible price. Whispers in the dark that clawed at his mind, visions of suffering that tormented him, and a sense of being eternally watched by unseen eyes. Bartolo realized too late that the darkness he had embraced was insatiable, always demanding more, threatening to consume his very soul. For years he walked this perilous path, torn between the power he wielded and the faint memory of his true calling. Then one night, in the solitude of his private chapel, a light unlike any earthly illumination pierced the darkness. It was blinding, warm, and overwhelmingly pure. A voice spoke, not in words, but in a presence that filled his very soul. "Bartolo, you have strayed, but you can still return." Fear and hope clashed in his heart. He fell to his knees and confessed every sin, every pact, every shadowy act he had committed. He begged for mercy, for guidance, for redemption. And in that moment, the darkness recoiled, shrieking like a storm, yet could not touch him. The light enveloped him completely, purging the shadows, and for the first time in years, he felt true peace. From that moment forward, Bartolo dedicated his life entirely to God. He traveled tirelessly, healing, preaching, and helping those ensnared by darkness. Stories spread of miraculous interventions, of lost souls reclaimed, and of a man who had once been a servant of evil now walking in holiness. He became a living testament that even the deepest fall could lead to the highest rise, that no soul is beyond salvation. Bartolo Longo's life had spanned the extremes, from priest of darkness to saintly guide, from despair to divine light. And the world remembers him not only for the sins he overcame, but for the hope he inspired, proving that even in the depths of shadow, God's mercy can raise a soul to sainthood. Years passed, and Bartolo Longo's story of redemption spread far beyond the towns and villages he visited. People came from distant lands, drawn not only by curiosity, but by hope. They came with burdens, guilt, and secrets they feared to confess, pacts made in desperation, lives entangled with darkness, and hearts heavy with despair. One stormy night, a man arrived at Bartolo's small chapel, trembling, eyes wide with terror. He confessed to using forbidden knowledge to manipulate others, to gain wealth and influence, only to find himself trapped in fear, haunted by shadows he could not escape. As he spoke, the air seemed to thicken, and the candlelight flickered wildly, casting monstrous shapes along the walls. But Bartolo remained calm, his presence radiating authority and divine light. Guiding the man to the altar, Bartolo began to pray, invoking the names of angels, reciting sacred passages, and calling upon God's mercy. The shadows writhed and twisted, attempting to envelop the man, but Bartolo's unwavering faith cut through the darkness. A brilliant light filled the chapel, and the oppressive weight lifted. The man fell to the floor, tears streaming down his face, freed from the chains that had bound his soul. Word of the miracle spread quickly. Pilgrims recounted visions of Bartolo walking among them in radiant light, guiding their steps, offering whispers of prayer and hope. Even after his death, his spirit seemed to linger, a guardian of the faithful, protecting souls from the temptations and darkness he had once known intimately. Bartolo's life became a blueprint for redemption. He had walked through the abyss, faced the allure of darkness, and emerged transformed. He taught that the path to salvation is not without trials, that true faith requires courage to confront one's own shadows, and that God's mercy is stronger than any sin or pact made in desperation. The ex-priest who had once served darkness had become a saint in both deed and spirit. His story endured as a warning, a guide, and a source of hope for generations. Even the darkest soul can find light, and even the deepest shadows cannot withstand the mercy of God. In the years following Bartolo Longo's death, the chapel where he had prayed became a pilgrimage site. Pilgrims spoke of strange but comforting phenomena, a warm light that seemed to guide lost souls, whispers of prayer in empty halls, and visions of Bartolo himself, radiating serenity and holiness. It was as if his spirit had merged with the cathedral, eternally watching over those who sought redemption. One evening, during a violent storm, a young woman arrived, clutching an old, blood-stained talisman she had received from a cult promising power and protection. She confessed that she had been drawn into darkness, desperate to save her family, but had instead invited terror into their lives. As she knelt before the altar, the shadows around her seemed to pulse, alive and menacing. But Bartolo's presence, invisible yet undeniable, filled the space with a golden light that pushed back the darkness. Heeding the lessons of his own past, Bartolo's spirit guided her through prayer, teaching her to surrender her fear, to confess her mistakes, and to trust in God's mercy. Slowly, the oppressive shadows dissipated, leaving her trembling but free. For the first time in months, she felt peace, a profound, cleansing peace that lifted the weight from her soul. Stories like hers spread, multiplying across towns and countries. People who had once served darkness, or who were tempted by forbidden knowledge, came seeking guidance. Each left transformed, carrying Bartolo Longo's message. True power lies not in knowledge or control, but in faith, humility, and the willingness to embrace God's mercy. Even centuries later, his legacy endured. The ex-priest who had once walked with darkness, who had faced temptation and sin, became a beacon of hope and a guardian for the lost. Pilgrims, scholars, and faithful alike recognize that Bartolo Longo's life was proof that no soul is beyond redemption, no darkness too deep, and no secret too dangerous for those who walk in God's light. And so the story of the priest who served darkness and became a saint concludes, not in fear, but in eternal illumination. Bartolo Longo's spirit lives on in every soul he saved, every miracle witnessed, and every heart turned toward the light of God. His journey from shadow to sanctity remains a timeless testament. The mercy of God can redeem even the most fallen, and faith can conquer the deepest darkness. Fearful Face Fire Latin Cross. As the years turned into decades, the legacy of Bartolo Longo became more than legend. It became living guidance for all who sought redemption. The chapel he had sanctified remained a beacon, where light seemed to radiate even in the darkest nights, and visitors often felt an invisible hand guiding them toward peace. Those who had once been lost, ensnared by fear, temptation, or forbidden knowledge, left transformed, their burdens lifted, their souls renewed. Miracles continued to unfold, the sick healed, families reconciled, and the desperate found hope. Pilgrims spoke of seeing Bartolo's image in visions, a radiant figure standing in the light, guiding prayers, and comforting the weary. Scholars studied his writings, discovering a wisdom that transcended time, that the Church's deepest secrets, while powerful and dangerous, were never meant to dominate but to illuminate, to test faith, and to protect the innocent. Bartolo Longo's life had been a journey from darkness to divine light. He had once been a priest of shadows, tempted and bound by forbidden knowledge, yet he had risen above, embracing mercy, humility, and unwavering faith. His story became a timeless reminder. No matter how deep the fall, redemption is always possible. No matter how strong the darkness, God's light endures. Even after death, his presence lingered, not as a ghost of fear, but as a guiding spirit, a guardian of faith, and a symbol of hope for countless souls. Bartolo Longo had faced the abyss, survived, and returned to walk among the living through his teachings, miracles, and enduring influence. And so the ex-priest who had once served darkness achieved something far greater than power. He became a saint in spirit, a protector of the faithful, and a living testament to the boundless mercy of God. His story ends not in despair, but in eternal illumination, proof that even the darkest paths can lead to divine light, and that faith, courage, and mercy can overcome all shadows. Fearful Face Fire Latin Cross. After Bartolo Longo's passing, the world seemed to feel the echo of his life. The chapel where he had once faced darkness became a sanctuary of miracles. Pilgrims arrived with burdens they could not bear alone, families torn apart, souls haunted by fear, people trapped in cycles of despair, and left transformed. They spoke of a presence, invisible yet undeniable, that guided their steps, whispered words of hope, and filled the air with a warmth that banished shadows. One night, a man arrived carrying an ancient, cursed amulet, the remnants of a dark ritual he had performed to gain wealth. The amulet seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, and the chapel grew cold as he approached. But Bartolo Longo's spirit, radiant and unyielding, appeared to him, not to punish, but to guide. The man was led through prayers and rites of cleansing, his fear confronted and stripped away by the overwhelming light of divine mercy. When he emerged, he was free. The darkness that had plagued him was gone. As decades turned into centuries, Bartolo's story became legend. His writings, prayers, and teachings were preserved, studied, and shared. They revealed the profound truth that knowledge and power alone cannot save a soul. Only faith, humility, and surrender to God can conquer the deepest darkness. His life became a blueprint for redemption, a map showing that even the most fallen can rise, that even the darkest paths can lead to salvation. The cathedral, now a place of pilgrimage, seemed alive with his presence. Lights flickered in patterns that felt purposeful, whispers of guidance filled the air, and visitors claimed visions of Bartolo himself, radiant in divine light, offering comfort and direction. The man who had once walked with darkness had become eternal, not merely in memory, but as a guiding force for every soul seeking the light. And so the ex-priest who served shadows became a saint of mercy and redemption. Bartolo Longo's story is a timeless reminder. No darkness is too deep, no sin too great, and no soul too lost to be touched by God's light. Even in the face of fear, temptation, and forbidden knowledge, faith and divine mercy prevail, illuminating the path for all who seek it. Fearful face fire Latin cross,